I gather this may be at odds with the party line, which I would suggest is atheist in its Marxist interpretation of religion being the chloroform of the masses. Am I right? Now, I'll also quote part of my reply to that in the further response I sent him. I responded by saying, the point you raise about religion is something that's often been discussed in the party. There's no doubt that religion doesn't form part of the socialist idea as conceived by the SPGB. The problem, however, is that for so many people, religious belief of one kind or another is something that's ingrained in them, owing to the fact that it's been part of their whole life and being. Most people have now forsaken organised religion, as you have, but even then it's hard for them not to carry on believing in some kind of God or deity, even if it's not one that's as clearly defined as in the traditional religions. The question then is this an entirely private matter? Well, I must say I've always been agnostic on this one, or rather I've taken the view that it depends on what the nature of a person's religious belief is. If it's a belief in some form of spirituality or spiritual or moral values, then I don't think it need conflict with the materialist nature of the socialist case. After all, virtually all human beings have at least some kind of spiritual life, and all human societies have a moral dimension. However, if someone's religion entails belief in some figure up there who's guiding us or determining our future, then even if it is in a sense private, I honestly can't see that it's compatible with the socialist view of the world. That's my personal take on it. So that was part of the response anyway to the inquirer who had written. And it sort of gives an idea where I personally stand on this particular aspect, but neither the inquirer's letter nor my response really answers the question of why our idea can, perhaps more than we'd like, be attractive to people with a religious conviction, with what you might call a faith. Maybe it's tied up with the undeniably strong sense of social morality that at least some holders of religious ideas have. Maybe they see in the idea of a world of free access and economic equality some kind of reflection of a morality which they consider comes from their belief in religion. And of course there are two possible approaches to socialism by socialists. These are distinct from, if not necessarily opposed to each other, and then they're not mutually exclusive either. One approach is that we want socialism because it would be right and good, and there's nothing wrong with that. The other approach is that we want socialism because it's in our individual and collective interests. Well, perhaps the first of these two approaches, we want socialism because it would be right and good, coincides quite neatly with the morality some people think is dictated by their religious beliefs or values. But perhaps we can take that up again later in the discussion. So this may be seen as one way in which values associated with religion by some people can be seen to be compatible with socialist ideas. But on the direct question of whether socialism is a faith, what socialists will be equally familiar with is the idea often expressed by non-socialists that socialism is actually the same as or akin to a religion or a faith because it aspires to, it believes in some kind of ideal. It aspires to some kind of perfect utopian society, a sort of kingdom of God, if you like, something that isn't possible. And at bottom, therefore, socialism is seen as a sort of belief, an impossible belief, in the same way as the ideals of religion are something which which can't be defined or which can't be achieved. Part of this idea is to be found in the God that failed syndrome, which is often referred to in relation to people who in the 1930s and 40s were seduced by Soviet communism and then gave it up. You know, their God was Soviet communism. In the end they realised that it wasn't achievable, therefore they gave it up. We all probably had this kind of argument thrown at us, it's just another religion. One of my own early experiences of it was with my former father-in-law who was French, and many years ago I'd agreed to give a talk on socialism in Paris when the party had a group there. The meeting was in a bookshop, but I thought it went reasonably well. But when I got back, the main question my father-in-law wanted to ask was how many people were there? And I said about a dozen. He replied, as though it were highly significant, like the apostles. It was clear what he was driving at. We were some kind of replacement religion. And it's interesting in this connection what the name is that's often given to the followers of Robert Owen. Quite a few people here will know Robert Owen. In the first half of the 19th century, the ideas of Robert Owen were very advanced for their time, arguing for social equality, what they saw as rational solutions anyway to social problems. We probably refer to them as utopian socialists because of their overall view about how their end could be achieved. But with regard to the position of the Owenites on religion, they very clearly rejected it, and one of their stated aims was to prepare public opinion for what they call the secular millennium. Yet they were labelled, and still often are, the rational religionists. Rationality somehow being seen as another form of religion. I'll give just one other example of this thing. I have a friend who's got no adherence to any established religion, but as many people do, somehow is able to claim that the idea of God is valid, or at least may be valid. And he refers to the most well-known and most public of modern atheists in Britain, Richard Dawkins, as a profoundly religious man. In other words, militant atheists, for their very militancy, are religious. Their atheism is a form of religion. In the same way, I'm sure, though he's never said it to me directly, that he believes me as a socialist to be religious as well. And with this argument about an ideology, a powerfully held idea being a replacement for religion, there often goes the assumption, unspoken or otherwise, that human beings need something to believe in. I sort of heard it yesterday from Roger when he talked about football. People have substituted football for religion. It's in its own way, it's actually a kind of human nature argument. I mean, it's not quite the argument that, the usual human nature argument that we're bad, we're greedy, we're competitive by nature. Nothing you can do about that. It's not quite that argument, but it is a human nature argument that we are sort of at bottom fundamentally by nature religious. And if it's not a belief in religion that we're involved in, or a belief in God, we substitute it with something else, and quite possibly with an idea. Now, though for socialists this argument as a generalisation is clearly unacceptable, it's probably not entirely nonsense, in the sense that there do seem to be personality types forged in the complex way personalities are forged, that do seem to seek meaning, solace, call it what you like, in an unshakable belief, in a firm idea. And it's not unusual for such personalities to move, sometimes quite brutally, from the religious to the secular, or vice versa. We've actually seen some other examples of this amongst party members, or at least ex-party members. Well, can socialism, as we understand it in the Socialist Party and seek to achieve it, be called a religion, a faith on the same level as a belief in some kind of God or deity? I remember an old member of Manchester branch replying to someone who, in talking to him when he was selling the Socialist Standard in front of the Central Library in Manchester, replying to this person who said that we were the same as a religion, with the words, no, religion is blind faith, socialism is real hope. Well, that's one way, it's a sort of an economical way of dealing with it. Religions or faiths, in the conventional sense anyway, presuppose some almighty non-material being who makes important decisions that affect the world and affect our lives. In other words, faith in this sense usually presupposes the supernatural in one form or another, and it normally presupposes the inability on the part of humans to control affairs and events. Now, socialism obviously eschews all this, And although